So, you've come back to me.
Oh, Bogey! From the very instant I saw you, I knew you'd protect me!
Well, if you get a fair judge, you'll be out of the booby hatch in 20 years, and you can come back to me then. I sure hope they don't give you the dip, precious.
You don't mean...
That's right, I'm sending you up the river, without a paddle or so much as a beginner's swimming lesson.
Oh, you're kidding! Boy, you still had me going there for a minute, Bogey. What a sense of humor!
I won't play this out for you, Roger.
Oh, cut it out! The gag's over!
I don't gag, Roger. I swallow the truth, no matter how bad it tastes.
Well, if you don't cut it out, I will. Exit stage right.
Well, he won't get far. His feet are flatter than mine. You folks enjoy the show while I catch up with that leporine loony. Leporine means related to rabbits. Look, just stay in school and whatever you do, don't become a private detective. No student loans, they said. Easy work, they said. Oh, brother.
Hello, everyone. That's another, well, I've got my headphones on still, don't I? That's not the first time that's happened to me. Hi, everybody. We're back again for another live reading. For those of you tuning in for the first time, I always start off with a spectacularly lame sketch between Roger Rabbit and Humphrey Bogart, since they are the primary inspirations for this novel. Always, well, not fun, but always something. Who have we got in the chat with us? Rasheen is here, my good friend from the studio. Good to see you again. And Bryn, perennial favorite, says, did you say you'll be out of the booby hatch? Indeed I did. The booby hatch is an old-timey word. Well, I was going to say for prison, but I actually think it means the funny farm, as they would say back in the olden days. How is the stream coming through? It says, please check video resolution. It's not optimal. Well, not optimal is different than not coming through. The light's still green, so I think we're right. So that's it for the opening sketch. We'll just give ourselves a few minutes for people to show up. I actually did a bit of plugging. I put the link to this stream in a few places I don't normally, so maybe we'll have some new people joining us today. Would be very exciting. So, I thought I'd go over some comments from last time that I didn't get to, that I thought were interesting, worth replying to. John Cosgrove, good friend of mine, plays D&D with me, said, in reference to what was his name? The toon doctor that Roger sees, the toon psychiatrist, who is a beaver, was his name? I think his name was literally Dr. Beaver. John said, I'm very impressed that they, meaning toons, managed to have a worse psych than a real one. I assume he means psychiatrist. Yeah, the doctor was pretty dismissive. Noir novels tend not to have the most forward-thinking view on mental health. But yeah, Roger could use someone better, let's say. Bryn also brought up, I like how Eddie just compliments himself from time to time. I think you're referring to the part where Roger says, oh, we went red for a second there, but we're back in the green. I'm just going to close a few of these background apps to keep this this little old laptop of mine turning over. There we go. I think you're referring to the bit where Eddie breaks into more or less Roger's home, but tidies up after himself, and he says, "Ain't I considerate?" It's like, well, I think he's poking a little fun at himself there. Oh, and Bryn also had a really fun comment about the musical scale left on the hat rack. That would be a fun scarf idea. I agree. That would be really funky. I have some friends who knit, so, maybe we could get a commission going or something. Who else have we got in the chat? Ah, excellent. Cool. Tracy is here. Hi, Tracy. Katrin is here. Bryn says, perennial favorite. I don't know what perennial means, but I know how to use it. I also wanted to share some of Bryn's artwork. Bryn did, I think this was from the first stream, but I've forgotten to share it. This is Bryn's interpretation of Rocco de Greasy. Obviously, I've been doing the voice as Rocco from Rocco's Modern Life. So here it is. Isn't that great?
Filbert, do you know what happens if this company doesn't make money? You're fired!
I thought that was pretty fantastic. Giant puffy sleeves on Rocco there. So thank you, Bryn. Appreciate it as always. And I also have something fun to share with you after the show. So stick around if you like. Who have we got? Bryn says, I googled it. I think it means seasonal. So, you know, seasons come and seasons go, Bryn. No, I'm kidding. We're kidding. All right. Do I have anything else to share with you? Not particularly. We'll just give it a minute or two more. You guys can help me out, you early birds. We have a couple new characters in this chapter. One of them is, so we'll need to think up some voices for me to do. One of them is a toon cop, male, serious, respectable, no nonsense, tough but fair, as opposed to the human cop, we'll also need a voice for him, who is a bit more nasty and a bit of a law and order fanatic and not that keen on tunes. So, two male voices. I mean, they don't have to be male, they can be anything. A toon cop and a human cop is who we're going to need for the first chapter. Bryn says, I'll take what I can get. Yep, pick harvest while the fruit is ripe. Is that something people say? I'm going to say it is. Okay. Well, we're very nearly ready to begin, so maybe I'll do the recap last time on Who Censored Roger Rabbit, the novel upon which the film was based by Gary K. Wolfe. So, Eddie is continuing his investigation into Roger's allegation that he was promised his own star and comic strip, and has been unfairly treated by the DeGreasy Brothers comic syndicate. Eddie spoke to Roger's estranged wife, Jessica Rabbit, on the set of her strip, and she says she went back to Rocco DeGreasy because it was Roger who changed, not her. Roger, meanwhile, fears for his life because an unknown assailant hit him with a pie. And he also believes that Jessica still loves him. He insists that Jessica still loves him, and that Rocco must somehow be coercing Jessica into saying such things about him and their marriage. Eddie then dropped by the home of Carol Masters, the photographer for the Roger Rabbit Baby Herman comic strip, who had nothing but glowing things to say about Roger, and nearly turned violent when Eddie began to imply Roger might not be all there. Rocco DeGreasy insists that he's treated Roger fairly, and asks Eddie to speak with Roger's psychiatrist, a toon beaver who dismisses Roger as a neurotic, who likely hit himself with the pie. Sure enough, Eddie discovers that the pie was paid for by a rabbit, matching Roger's description. So, Eddie's made up his mind to tell the rabbit that he's done with the screwy case when he finds him dead in his apartment. Dun dun dun! Pipe organ. Clues include his last word balloon. This is actually a little bad on my part. I forgot to read. I somehow just skipped over the paragraph that includes maybe the most important clue, which was Roger's last words in a word balloon. So I've got that here. I'll read that for you now. The balloon was clouded over, and its words had faded out drastically, but by holding it up to the light, found it quite readable. "No fair," it said. "You got me everything. Jessica, my contract." If Roger had been talking to his wife when he was shot, that meant either he was shot, either she shot him or knew who had. I copied the words into my notebook, draped the fragile balloon back across the banister, and set Roger over it. So, there's my little prop. For those of you who are trying to solve this mystery, "No fair. You got me everything. Jessica, my contract." Roger's last words. So, aside from that, he also found a recently fired .38 revolver in Roger's dresser and a Kermit the Frog squeeze toy outside a window that he figures must have been dropped there as early as last night. And with that, he decides it's time to bring in the fuzz. So, that's where we're at. Roger Rabbit is dead, and the police are on the scene. Okay. Cool, we've got, John is here. John says we're here. I'm hoping that means John and Danny are tuning in. We've got some good suggestions. Bryn says a toon cop and a human cop walk into a bar. Honk honk, waka waka. Katrin Parker suggests Danny DeVito. I can maybe do a Danny DeVito. The fun part about doing this is I don't really know if I could do some of the voices you guys suggest. So we'll find out together. Oh, Katrin has a punchline. The Toon Cop says, "Youch!" And the human cop says, "Please take me to the hospital. My injuries are real." A quick study, that Katrin. Always got a quip up her sleeve. What a normal thing to say about someone. I'm beginning to speak like a private detective in a noir story. I might just adjust the microphone so that we can hear me slightly better. How is that? Is that good? I'm going to say yes. Cool. Danielle is here too. Well, then I think that's a good crowd. I say, let us begin reading. Okay, here we go. The cops cruised in under command of a humanoid toon detective, Captain Clever Cleaver. Clever is in quote marks, it's a nickname. The police force contains one division of humans and one of toons, with each faction investigating only crimes committed against its own kind. Doesn't seem like a very good way to set up a police department. Anyway, I never saw a toon cop sharp enough to hack it on the human side, though Cleaver came about as close as any. He carried his gun where other men carried pictures of their loved ones. He wore a trench coat and a broad-brimmed slouch hat and smoked cigars that smelled like they'd been snipped off the end of something used to tie rowboats to a pier. He had a big square jaw and grunted a lot, and called all women honey and most men butch. Cleaver sat me down on Roger's sofa and gave me an evil eyeballing straight out of the Crime Stoppers textbook. I gave back better than I got. He blinked first and settled down to cases. Alright, I'm going to need to decide on a voice here, unless we have any other suggestions. Oh, how lovely. Rasheen says, I've got my strawberries and cream black tea. I'm set. Fantastic. Someone's having a lovely afternoon. And you get to watch me. I mean, what could be better? And Simon's here. Well, fantastic. You haven't missed anything. I think I'm going to have to go with Danny DeVito, because that's the single suggestion we've got. Don't forget, later in the chapter, we will need a voice for a human cop as well. I think Danny DeVito is a pretty toony voice for a toon, so I'm happy with that. We'll see how good it is. From the beginning, Butch. That sounds nothing like him. Let me think. Let me get into character. Charlie, we gotta get some rum ham. It's just turning into Benny the Cab. From the beginning, Butch, he growled. You know the drill as well as I do.
Nothing much to it. The dead rabbit hired me to unravel a problem for him. He believed Rocco and Dominic DeGreasy, the two guys heading up his cartoon syndicate, owed him his own strip. According to the rabbit, they promised it to him when they signed him up. They never delivered, so he asked me to pressure them into it. He also told me to check out a rumor that somebody wanted to buy out his contract. I nosed around and came up blank. The DeGreasys insist they never made the promise. The rumor remains a rumor. That's about everything. I came here this morning to resign the case.
With a full refund of any advance monies paid but not earned, I assume, said Clever sarcastically.
I get no complaints.
And no referrals either, from what I hear. At least not from the toon sector.
Roger's impressions of a cop, where he gets a big old chin and handcuffs himself to Valiant. Wouldn't that get confusing, doing Roger's impression of a cop in a story that also features Roger? Anyway, we're in the middle of plot here. I'll check the comments later. And we can all just live with my absolutely nothing like Danny DeVito.
And no referrals either, from what I hear. At least not from the toon sector.
By design, Captain, by design. I don't encourage toon work. It's a specialized field. I get enough human business to keep me occupied.
I uncrossed my legs and put my flat feet on the floor so he wouldn't see my run-down heels and the gaping hole in my left sole. I guess I waited too long, because he plopped himself down on the chair across from me and made a big point of propping his feet up on a coffee table, so I had a direct shot at his shoes, their flat bottoms, flat as a pancake, but in perfect repair. A sergeant carried in Roger's last words, encased in a plastic sack. Sir, we found these under the stiff. Cleaver got up, took the words, and held them to the light, using his body to shield them so I couldn't see. He returned them to the sergeant with instructions to rush them to the lab for rate of hardening determination.
Anybody in this case named Jessica?
He asked, rolling his stogie from one side of his mouth to the other. Hold on, where's my stogie? I know I've got it in here somewheres. I'm really, really well organized, everybody. There we go. I'm going to hold this in my mouth. Maybe that'll help cover up how bad the impression is.
Anybody in this case named Jessica?
No, it's worse. A million times worse.
Anybody in this case named Jessica?
He asked, rolling his stogie from one side of his mouth to the other.
Rocco's estranged wife.
I laid out the lurid details concerning the relationships amongst Jessica, Rocco, and Roger. No sense concealing it from him. He would eventually find out, and this way I scored a few points for cooperation.
The wife's a suspect.
I asked innocently. Instead of giving me a direct answer, he motioned me into the front entry hall. We got there just in time to watch a brace of burly ambulance attendants wheel Roger out of the door on a dolly.
Know what it is?
Cleaver pointed to a control panel beside the door. Lights on the panels flashed in random sequence, maybe 100 individual lights, each blinking 6 or 7 times a minute. I found I couldn't watch it for more than a few seconds without getting a headache.
A burglar alarm. Although I've never seen one quite as sophisticated as this in a home.
That's because it's a special job, put in by the builder of this development. A big selling feature out here, since the two neighborhoods routinely report the city's highest burglary rates. Can you imagine? They steal from one another. Almost makes me ashamed to be a toon.
If he was waiting for me to say,
I know how you feel,
he was in for a few days of silence. I've never been ashamed to be a human. Yikes. When I saw he wasn't going to respond, he resumed his explanation of Roger's security system.
The alarm goes on automatically, and when the front door closes. It wasn't on when you got here because the music scale had drifted in, gotten wrapped around the doorknob, and was holding the door ajar. Disengaging the alarm requires a multi-sequential process. It took some of my best experts to figure out.
Which means that nobody got into this house unless Roger wanted them to.
Correct. Hence the likelihood that Roger knew the killer well enough to invite him inside.
So you figure the wife.
That would be my first guess.
It's just Baby Herman.
I would also like to explain how the killer got out without sounding the alarm. Since Jessica had lived here with the rabbit, she must know the code. She could have easily turned off the system and walked away.
Very logical,
I said politely.
Congratulations on your sound reasoning. You've overlooked one teeny tiny problem. According to Roger, he asked Jessica to meet him with many times before, and she has consistently refused. Why should she suddenly accept his offer now? When I talked to her yesterday, she made it quite clear she had no intentions of pursuing a reconciliation. I suggested a get-together between her and Roger, and she gave me a firm no.
Cleaver seemed quite relieved when another sergeant came up and saved him from having to tiptoe out of the corner he'd painted himself into. The sergeant showed Cleaver 2 items, both encased in plastic bags. One was the .38 pistol from Roger's nightstand. The other was a hunk of metal, the fatal bullet, judging from the size of it. "One shot missing from the .38, the sergeant said to Cleaver, but Cleaver took more of an interest in the slug.
Hey, Butch, you ever see one like this?
He took the bullet where I could inspect it. It looked like it had started life as a perfect sphere before running into Roger Rabbit. And a wall.
Seems to be an old-fashioned musket ball from a black powder long rifle or a flintlock pistol.
It's my guess, too. You run into any antique gun collectors in this case?
Can't say I have.
Cleaver returned the sack to his sergeant.
Process them both through ballistics,
he instructed. Cleaver picked up Roger's cigar box, opened it, and saw the carrots inside. His granite jaw cracked upward slightly at either end of his mouth. Poor guy. But that's what happens when you hang around toons all day. You start to develop a sense of humor. Next thing you know, nobody takes you seriously anymore, and you wind up laughing yourself straight into the morgue. I don't know exactly what that means. Does he really think that laughing will get you put in the morgue? In the movie it does. In the movie, toons can actually die from laughing. Anyway, small detail.
The deceased have any enemies you know of?
Asked Cleaver. I shrugged.
Who could hate a rabbit?
Just then, another police car squealed up outside. The rear door opened, and out came Captain Rusty Hudson. He worked the human side and had a well-earned reputation as the most feared kind of law and order fanatic. One with a self-starter and no brake. He wrapped up his assignment so quickly and so neatly that he routinely had the lowest active caseload of any human detective. I wondered why the department had sent its superstar to investigate a case involving a dead rabbit. So, I'm going to see what we've got for Hudson. Benny DeVito, yeah. Suggestion from John. Batman, I like that. Who else? The other cop should be Troy McClure. Oh, I do like that. Cole Meany for the other cop, Irish cop's archetype. Yes, that's very true. Linda Burger from Bob's Burgers. That's pretty good. Let's keep that in our hats. I should have suggested Bonkers for the Toon Cop, everybody's favorite cartoon cop character. Mark Hamill Joker voice, Cosgrove from Freakazoid. Okay, well now we're spoiled for choice, really. Maybe I'll save Linda Burger for another voice. How does she sound? Oh, Bobby. Let me just check my notes. I'm keeping a little tally of who I've accepted, who I've taken suggestions from. So, Cole Meany. I think Cole Meany will also blend in.
Cole Meany's just an Irish voice. Very gruff, but more or less the same.
I think it'll blend in too much.
I don't really know how to do a Bonkers voice, and nobody really knows Bonkers because it sucks.
Mark Hamill Joker.
Stick him up, Batman, or else I'll plug you full of lead. Woo! Ha! I'm crazy. I'm like a clown, but I'm crazy.
I think Troy McClure will be a nice contrast. So thank you, Katrin. I think that's what we're going to go with today. Cosgrove from Freakazoid, another one I really like, but don't know if it's enough of a contrast.
His whole voice is that he's just very down. Freakazoid, you want to go to the Peach Parade?
Do I? All right, let's carry on with Troy McClure as Captain Rusty Hudson. Hudson came inside, took a look around, and saw me.
Finally, found your level down here with the rest of the crazies, huh, Valiant? Nice to see you two again, Captain.
What can I do for you, sir?
Asked Cleaver. Even though they held the same rank, the department's age-old unwritten law required a Toon officer to defer to a human, and everybody who knew Hudson knew he would make life extremely miserable for any Toon colleague deviating from tradition.
When I heard the report about this Roger Rabbit character being killed, said Hudson, I figured I'd better shag right over here before your bunch gets too far into the search. No offense, but I've had a lot of problems with Toons losing evidence on me before.
What kind of evidence you after?
A .38 caliber revolver. Maybe has one shot gone. You find anything like that when you toss this place?
Cleaver nodded.
Sure did. Upstairs in the nightstand. One bullet fired. I sent it to ballistics. Why, you got something on it?
I have reason to believe,
He's very up. He's very up for a mean character, Troy McClure.
I have reason to believe, it was the murder weapon in a human homicide last night. A human homicide? Who? I asked.
Hudson looked at me the way people look at escargot when they find out that means snails.
You got a reason to be here, Gumshoe? You witness a suspect or what?
He was employed by the Rabbit, explained Cleaver. I was just taking a statement when you arrived.
Hudson nodded to show he understood that police work often forced officers to associate against their wills with guys like me. He expanded his narrative, but for Cleaver's benefit, not mine.
About 1 this morning, we got a call from a hysterical woman who turned out to be the Rabbit's wife. Seems she lives with a guy named Rocco DeGreasy, a big wheel in the comic industry. She was out late. When she got home, she saw a light on in DeGreasy's study. She went in to check and found DeGreasy slumped across his desk, dead. You got an estimated time of death? I asked, but Hudson ignored me. I did some quick checking around, he continued, and found out this rabbit had previously threatened DeGreasy's life in front of witnesses during a photo session at the photographer's studio. I also discovered that this rabbit bears a grudge because DeGreasy failed to honor a promise to give him his own strip. As if I needed more, DeGreasy had also grabbed the rabbit's girl. Put that all together and it spells murder. I'll give odds that the bullet we found in DeGreasy turns out to have come from the rabbit's gun.
Were you able to pinpoint the exact time of death?
Asked Cleaver, repeating my earlier question. Since this time it had come through channels, Hudson answered.
We figure about midnight.
Judging from the rabbits,
oh boy, this is a funny one.
Judging from the hardness of the rabbit's balloon, we figure about an hour later. You check Jessica Rabbit's alibi for then?
Cleaver asked.
No, why should I? What's she got to do with anything? The rabbit plugged DeGreasy. There's no doubt in my mind.
Great, that takes care of your murder. What about mine?
Cleaver's word balloon came out so frosty you almost needed a squeegee to read it.
These two deaths are too closely related to be a coincidence. Suppose Jessica Rabbit saw Roger kill Rocco, followed the rabbit back there and executed him for his crime. A perfect motive. The rabbit shot her lover, so Jessica shot the rabbit.
I'll let you solve that part of it.
Oh, there I go. Wrong voice. I have actually highlighted these so that I know who's who, but caught me off my game there. I'll let you solve that part of it, said Hudson, buffing his fingernails on his lapel, with the intense concentration that a casual onlooker might suspect it was the most important thing he had to do for the rest of his entire day. When the report comes back from ballistics, I'll stamp my case closed. What do I care who blew away some bunny? With that, he left the house, got into his car, and roared off. Siren on and lights flashing, a showboat to the end. Cleaver took a peek through a telescope set up in the front window, but it was too early to see any stars. Did that rabbit have what it takes to kill a man? Cleaver asked me. I don't know. On the other hand, he really hated Rocco de Greasy. But on the other hand, who can picture a killer rabbit? I haven't done my homework here. Wrong. I highlighted that whole section incorrectly. Pardon moi.
I don't know. On the one hand, he really hated Rocco de Greasy. But on the other hand, who can picture a killer rabbit?
Yeah, I know what you mean, said Cleaver. He drifted off into the mental Never-Never-Land where toons seem to spend 3/4 of their time.
You finish with me, Captain?
What? A series of tiny balloons, each containing an itsy-bitsy question mark, bubbled out of his head. The balloons popped, letting the question marks parachute to the floor. I was tempted to scoop them up and pocket them, since I know a book publisher who bought them to cut typesetting costs in his line of whodunits. Sure, said Cleaver. You can go. Just don't leave town without checking with me first. And one other thing. I don't know how you felt about this rabbit, or if you took his case seriously. But from here on out, this affair belongs to me. Official police investigation. You want to keep your license? You stay out. Understand?
100%, I said. I won't interfere.
I jammed my hand into my pocket and crossed my fingers.
I promise.
What have we got in chat? For Jessica, Joker, Sika. Oh, honey bunny. Let's see. Simon says, haha, your Joker was pretty good. Hamill with a slight twist of Cesar Romero. I do love Cesar Romero's Joker. My favorite bit of all time. He's on the phone. If you were here right now, Batman, I'd pound you to a pulp. Adam West is standing right behind him. Start pounding, Joker. Gets me every time.
Hi, I'm Captain Troy McClure. You may remember me from your loved ones. You may remember your loved ones from a time when they were alive, or not a suspect in a murder investigation.
Very good, very good. I'm going to carry on. I don't think there are any new characters in this chapter, but I'll just check my notes. No. Okay. Let's carry on. So, Eddie has more or less been bumped off the case. What is a guy to do? The elevator in my office building worked so seldom that the toon doorman, a strapping gorilla, made a nice chunk of change carrying people to the upper floors on his back. Today I lucked out. The elevator appeared and whisked me to the 12th floor in less than a week, which probably set a building record. My $300 a month bought me a waiting room where a secretary would sit, if I could ever afford to hire one, my office proper, and a small john. The place normally rented for $250, but I got charged an extra half yard because of the view. Open the window, look up, you see the sky. Look down, you see the street. Look straight out, you see the brickwork of the building next door. Great place, shabby and overpriced, but it suited me better than one of those chrome and glass stakes that builders keep pounding into the heart of what used to be a picturesque city. I noticed something wacky as soon as I took out my keys to open the outer door. Something wacky. I think I know what that means. The lock was badly scratched, sure sign of an amateur thief. The pros go in and out without leaving a trace, but amateurs always botch it. I slammed the open door and entered past the waiting room the way I learned in the corps, low and fast. Again, I mentioned last chapter, Eddie Valiant has been in the Marines. It didn't take me long to search the waiting room since it contained only 2 folding chairs and a card table with hardly thumbed magazines through it. Anybody small enough to hide behind any of that stuff didn't really worry me. I checked the door connecting this room with my office proper. It, too, bore signs of having been picked. I had a wall safe in my office, and in that I kept my gun. Just my luck to walk in on a burglar and get shot with my own piece. I took a few deep breaths, opened the door, and went in Marine style again, except this time I added a forward somersault, which might not have been the greatest idea in the world. You have to practice those things a lot or else you get dizzy, which is just how I wound up when I came out of it. I grabbed the edge of my desk for support and tried to look alert. Nobody shot me, so I figured the burglar had already skedaddled. But I was wrong. When the room straightened out, I found him, sitting behind my desk, brazen as you please. One thing for sure, I had no trouble picking this clown out of a lineup. He wore a long purple coat a fireman's hat, and a t-shirt that said, "Kiss me, I'm fuzzy." Sounds like laundry day. If I hadn't known any better, I would have sworn it was, "I'm sorry I had to break into your office like this, Mr. Valiant. I mean, picking your lock and all, but I didn't really know where else to go or who to turn to."
Roger? Roger Rabbit?
I went around the side of his desk, opened the bottom drawer, took out the office bottle, and swigged down a healthy glug. I stared at the rabbit until he got the message and shagged his tail out of my chair. I brushed a few pieces of stray hair off the seat and sat down.
Start explaining, and it better be good.
He went to the window and took in the $50 view. "I know what you think," he said. "You think I'm really Roger Rabbit, but I'm not. I'm his doppelganger, his mentally created duplicate."
Yeah, I know about that stuff.
I said, remembering Jessica falling to pieces around me.
"Well, Roger conjured me up last night about 11, the rabbit went on. "He had a photo session in the morning and needed a pair of red suspenders to wear at it. He gave me a $50 bill and told me to go out and buy him some."
He sent you out in the middle of the night to find him a pair of red suspenders?
"Yes, we can be very impulsive at times. Anyway, I left and started hitting those variety stores you see around, the ones that stay open late at night. I must have gone to 20 of them, but couldn't find a pair of red suspenders anywhere. I found green, blue, yellow, polka dot, orange, striped."
I did a few wheelies with my index finger. He caught my drift and kept his story rolling.
"When I finally found a store with the right color suspenders, they couldn't break my bill. So I hung around downtown until the bank opened, broke the bill, went back, and bought the suspenders."
Oh, my laptop says it's going to restart in 50 seconds. No, thank you. Remind me tomorrow. The laptop gets impatient because I literally always say, "Do it later. Do it later."
"I returned home about 10 this morning and found the place crawling with cops. I overheard two of them describing what happened, that I, or rather, the real me, had been killed. I didn't know what to do. I'm not very decisive when it comes to emergencies. I suppose I should have identified myself to the police, but I was afraid to. I feared that whoever got to the real Roger might come after me too. Then I thought of you."
Thanks.
"Don't mention it. Since I'm supposed to be dead, I didn't want to wait for you out in the hall where somebody might recognize me, so I picked your lock. I didn't think you'd mind. You don't, do you? It's actually my first try at it. And I told you before, I've always had a hankering to be a detective. I believe every detective should know how to pick locks. I'm sure you do. So I bought myself some lock-picking tools I saw advertised in the inside cover of a matchbook."
That was a real monologue you did there. Might just have a quick drink of water. What have we got going on in the chats? Nothing good. We're all enthralled. So, Roger's doppelganger is alive and well, it seems. He showed me a set of picks, only slightly smaller and less clumsy than the iron bar I used to pry the hubcaps off my car.
"They came with a self-instruction manual. Pretty neat, huh?"
Tell me,
I said after giving the office bottle another howdy-doody.
how long before you start to, fall apart?
The bunny stared at me with deep foreboding at the far wall, as though the hand of God had just inscribed the recipe for Hassenpfeffer.
"Hard to tell. Roger put a large jolt of mental energy into creating me. I could easily last 48 hours before until I...
The dark, watery boohoo balloon plopped to the floor. But I gave him this much. It didn't spill any tears.
"You have any idea who murdered me?"
He asked.
Yeah, I got an idea. You got a call from anyone last night?
I asked.
Or anybody come to see you?
He shrugged with a ridiculous move for a guy with next to no shoulders.
"I don't know. The mental strain of creating a doppel tends to disrupt short-term memory. I remember up to early yesterday evening, but not much after."
You don't remember getting a call from your wife, saying that she wanted to come over for a talk?
Jessica came to see me? Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy!"
Talk about happiness. If Roger had been Flash Gordon, he would have been outside his rocket ship swinging on a star. Flash Gordon, I know a little bit about that comic character. Sort of the original Luke Skywalker. In fact, George Lucas wanted to make a Flash Gordon movie, but when he couldn't get the rights, he just decided to make up his own space opera. There you go. Highly recommend the Italian-produced Flash Gordon movie that was made after the success of Star Wars to compete with it, but it's just outrageously camp. It's fantastic. Let's carry on.
I knew you could pull it off, Mr. Valiant. I knew I picked the right man. I knew you could get me my Jessica back. How did you do it? Put the arm on Rocco? That's it. I'll bet that's it. You found out what he had on her and forced him to stop.
With a swift left jab, I punched a jumbo hole into the biggest of his balloons.
Not so fast. I don't know for sure whether or not Jessica came to see you last night. If she did, it wasn't for a reconciliation.
Why then?
The police think she killed you, and I go along with them.
The rabbit shook his head so vigorously, his flopping ears left spiral marks on the fur around his head.
Not a chance. She loves me. She would never do a thing like that. What makes you suspect her?
For starters, your last words.
I took out my notebook and read them to him.
No fair. You got me everything. Jessica, my contract.
I turned the notebook and laid it on the corner of the desk so he could read his final statement for himself. Twice he followed the words along with his finger, and both times wound up in the exact same place.
Wait, I got it,
he said, holding a finger straight up as if to test the wind.
I wasn't talking to Jessica. I was talking about her to somebody else, to Rocco DeGreasy. I was talking about Jessica to Rocco DeGreasy, and he shot me.
Try again,
I said.
According to the cops, it's the other way around. You shot him.
I shot who?
Rocco DeGreasy.
Rocco?
Granted, the guy acted for a living, but his googly, wide-eyed, and puckered nose sure sounded dumbfounded to me.
You mean the police think I shot Rocco?
Dead as a doornail. He got his about an hour before you got yours. The way the cops figure it, you entered the DeGreasy's house, killed him, Jessica saw you do it, followed you home, and took her revenge.
That's ridiculous. I could never kill anybody, not even Rocco DeGreasy.
You threatened to once, remember, at a photo session in front of 2 reliable witnesses.
Roger began to bounce around so actively I checked the rug for hopscotch boxes. But I only saw the lifeless shag in yesterday's ashes.
Right, I did do that, but I didn't mean it. I could never kill another human being.
Another living being, pardon me. Careful point there.
I could never kill another living being. It's not in my nature. Why, I even sidestep ants on the street. I was being irrational that day. Look at it from my point of view. There I was, peacefully going about my job, when I walked in and Rocco DeGreasy, he started giving me guff about how he and I ought to get together and resolve this little misunderstanding about my contract. That's a direct quote. Misunderstanding. I'll never forget how his fat face jiggled when he said it. I told him there was no misunderstanding. He promised me my own strip, and that was that. End of negotiation. And that's when he laughed at me, and I went after him. I guess I became a tad irrational, what with his laughter, and this being my first time since I'd seen him, since he coerced Jessica into seeing me.
Roger is really talking a lot in this one, huh? It's tough with the lisp. The lisp, and I'm wearing braces at the moment, so bear with.
Assuming that he did coerce her.
Of course he coerced her. I told you before. She would never have left me of her own free will. She loved me. Jessica loved me. And I'm positive she still does. Anyway, yes, I attacked Rocco that day. And yes, I threatened to kill him. But I never intended to follow through.
What exactly do you remember about last night?
Most of the rabbit's thought balloons came up either totally blank or slightly hazy.
Not much, I'm afraid. I spent pretty much of an ordinary evening. I had dinner, watched some television, and read a while. No visitors, no phone calls, nothing out of the ordinary.
He dribbled out a few more empty memories before finally giving up trying.
Where was Rocco killed?
At his home, in his study. You ever been there?
No, never. We conducted our dealings exclusively at the office. How was he killed?
He got shot with a .38 caliber revolver.
The rabbit opened my cigar box and seemed rather disappointed to find it contained cigars.
Well, there you are. That should clear me. I've never fired a gun in my life, or owned one, for that matter.
What about the one in your nightstand?
Roger's words came up with at least a yard of spacing between them. I've got a speech bubble for that. Roger's words came out with at least a yard of spacing between them. So tiny I nearly got eye strain reading them.
What one in my nightstand?
This didn't slow things down at all.
A .38 caliber revolver with one bullet missing. The cops have it. They're running it through ballistics now, and I'd be willing to bet it turns out to be the murder weapon.
You're kidding? In my nightstand? How could that be? I've never owned a gun in my life.
You have no idea how it got there.
None. His eyelids rolled down. Don't you see? This is a frame-up. Somebody is trying to saddle me with Rocco's murder. Somebody killed him and planted the gun at my place. I probably caught them at it, and they killed me to keep me quiet. Does that make sense?
It did, and I told him so.
That's it then.
He used his big blue bandana to wipe the perspiration off his face, and a teasing comb to refluff his fur.
You find out who killed Rocco, and you also find out who killed me. You clear my name, and you bring my killer to justice.
You may not like what I find.
How so?
For starters, when I got to your house this morning, I found a musical scale trailing out of the piano. The song was When You Wish Upon a Star. That have any significance to you?
A light bulb flashed over Roger's head. It was less than a 5-watter, but it would get a lot brighter and hotter before I was done.
It was my favorite piece. I play it a lot and sing along.
I remember you telling me you serenaded Jessica the evening you proposed. When You Wish Upon a Star, by any chance?
The light bulb grew to 25 watts.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that was the song I played for Jessica that evening. After that, we always considered it our song.
So if she had been there with you last night, it would have been natural for you to play it for her again.
75 watts?
I suppose so, yes.
Now you tell me about your burglar alarm system. How does it work?
It's a marvelous device. It connects to every door and window in the house. It goes on automatically when the front door closes. You have to disengage it after you go in and before you go out, or the thing sets off a wail you wouldn't believe.
When I got to your house this morning, the door was ajar. The musical scale had gotten wrapped around the door handle. That's how I got in without setting off the alarm. The question is, how did the killer get out?
Beats me.
Jessica lived there in that house with you for nearly a year. Did she know the code to the disengage alarm?
100 watts?
Yes, she did.
So she very easily could have disengaged it before she shot you and walked out without setting it off.
Yes, I suppose she could have.
Did anybody else know the alarm code?
Sure, lots of people.
Name them.
200 watts and flashing caution.
Okay, she was the only one.
Right. The only one besides you who could have gotten out without tripping the alarm. Now let's investigate the other end. In order for the killer to get in, you had to disengage the alarm, correct?
Yes.
Would you have done that for Rocco de Grisi?
Of course not.
His brother Dominic?
No way.
How about Jessica?
Stop right there,
he said in a fragmented balloon.
Yep.
Stop right there. I know in my heart that Jessica didn't kill me, just as I know in my heart that I did not kill Rocco de Grisi. So you can stop that line of questioning out here and now.
Okay, let's try this one.
I pulled the rubber Kermit toy out of my pocket.
Ever see this before?
Roger squeezed it several times, giggling at when Kermit's head unfurled.
You see them around. It's a pretty popular toy. I can't say I recognize this one as being any different from 100 others I've seen. Where'd you get it?
I found it outside your house. It hadn't been there long. My guess is it was dropped by the killer.
Well, that would leave Jessica out. She would never carry something as silly as this.
Or it might have been dropped by somebody who saw the killer.
Oh.
He didn't seem very happy to hear that there may have been an eyewitness to his untimely demise. I guess that's what love does to you. Makes you put on blinders whenever your canter takes you anywhere near the truth.
Mr. Valiant, how was what did he use to...
You were shot once in the chest, and it looks like a clean hit. You didn't suffer much, if that's your concern.
He nodded and matched a set of crystalline teardrops rolled down either side of his face.
You were apparently killed with some sort of antique musket or pistol. You know anybody who owns a piece like that?
He shook his head no.
What about any other enemies you might have had? Anyone you haven't told me about? Anybody who might have wanted you out of the way?
Again he shook his head, put his bandana to his nose, and gave a loud honk, enough to give every moose within 10 blocks pawing at my door.
Mr. Valiant,
he said in those tiny, strung-out words again.
I don't have long to exist. 48 hours at the most. After that, I'll disintegrate, and Roger Rabbit will be gone forever. There's one thing that I'd like to ask you to do me for a favor before that happens. You see, Mr. Valiant, the real Roger, and now me, well, we've always wanted to be a private detective.
No way,
I said firmly. I wasn't about to sign on as nursemaid to a cottontail detective, dying wish or not.
Oh, please, Mr. Valiant, please, I'll do whatever you tell me to. It's not like I'm asking you to accommodate me permanently. 48 hours and I'll be gone, out of your life forever.
2 days isn't very long. Oh,
2 days isn't very long to solve a double homicide. Even if I did let you tag along, you might not be around for the close.
he gave me that irresistible please take me home look you get from a $3 pup in a pit store window.
You can do it. I know you can. What do you say, Mr. Valiant? Please?
I owed the rabbit, true. If it would make him happy to step and fetch for me, who was I to deny him?
All right, I'll take you on, but only under one condition. We level with each other, in everything. Agreed?
Sure.
He nodded his head so fast the end of his ear cracked like a whip.
Let's start by you telling me why you pulled that pie assault on yourself.
He switched back to that same forlorn puppy face that I guess he figured got me before.
On myself? No, Rocco did that.
I pointed toward the door.
Take a hop.
His puppy face grew in a big hurry into a beaten cur. His word balloons came out so heavily weighted down with guilt it dented the top of my desk.
I should have known I couldn't fool you.
Why did you even try?
He stared at a spot about 1,000,000 miles over my head.
I guess it was a ploy to get some sympathy. According to my psychiatrist, it goes back to when I was growing up. You see, I came from a very small town, and I
shook my head.
Spare me the historical details. I'm only interested in here and now. Like the bit about Rocco offering your own strip. You make that up too?
No, not that. That was the truth. I swear it.
And your story about you and Jessica. How about that?
True, every word of it.
He hung his head. If I hadn't jerked back in my chair, one of his ears would have speared me in the eye.
I'm sorry I tried to deceive you, he said. I won't ever do it again. You have my word on that.
He straightened up this time. This time, though, I was sitting well enough back that when his ear came whistling past.
Please don't hold my one indiscretion against me. I promise you total honesty from here on out.
And you tone down the goofiness too. You want to work with me? You act like a human.
You want humanity? Said Roger solemnly. You will get humanity you won't believe.
He held out his paw the exact way a person would. For the first, and I hoped last time in my life, I shook hands with a rabbit. So, what have we got in chat? Rasheen is asking, how do you remember all this stuff? Well, I certainly don't memorize the story, but I have found that more or less, with the exception of that one chapter with the two cops, the human and the toon, most chapters is Eddie Valiant speaking to one character. So I use a color to highlight the other character, and then whatever's not colored, I do as Captain Picard, as Eddie Valiant. It's pretty, for the most part, it doesn't trip me up. We've been going for 50 minutes, but I think maybe we should squeeze in another chapter or two if we can. Do we have any new characters coming up in this chapter? No, not in this chapter. So, I took the rabbit to my place. He didn't draw so much as a second glance from the people on the street. Shows you what the world's coming to. I can still remember the first toon who moved into the neighborhood. A good-looking guy, humanoid, a dead ringer for Smilin' Jack. I looked that up. It was sort of an Air Force comic about a flying ace who probably fought Nazis or something like that. Real personable and as near normal as a toon could be. That was 20 years ago, and people marched through the streets in protest. They lost, he stayed. Now we've got more barnyards than old MacDonald's farm. Every morning, my next-door neighbor sticks his head out the window and crows at the sun. You go into a diner for lunch, and the guy on the stool next to you orders a bale of hay. Travel 10 feet down any sidewalk, and you'll step in at least one deflated moo balloon. And this is what politicians downtown call social progress. Again, a bit of old-fashioned cynical conservatism from Eddie Valiant. I unlocked the door, and we both went in. I don't believe in frou-frou. That's what it says, frou-frou. My living room comes furnished with a floor lamp, reading chair, and a sofa. Add to that a wooden table where I play poker and work out chess problems, plus a few pictures, mostly of me and the cores, and that's about it. Is that how you say it? C-O-R-P-S. Cores? I know it's not corpse. The cores. I don't know nothing about no army. I keep my chess books on the floor and my gun in a closet. My dinner's in the freezer and my booze under the sink. Simple and unpretentious. The kind of life guys go off to monasteries to enjoy, and I live it every day, right here in the City of Angels.
I sat Roger down on the sofa and went into my closet to dig him out a surprise. Disguise, pardon me. I'm really on my game today. I knew that if Rusty Hudson, or Clever Cleaver, ever spotted him, they'd haul him in and grill him. That would easily eat up his 2 remaining days. Plus, I also had 2 killers to worry about, Rocco's and Roger's. If either of them spotted Roger, the rabbit wouldn't even last that long. So I had to keep anyone from recognizing Roger. A good trick when you're dealing with a 6-foot-tall, nationally famous rabbit. But never let it be said that I didn't give it a try. In the back of my closet, I found a pair of baggy cords, a wool shirt, and a blue watch cap, with enough stretch in it to absorb those ears. I handed him the lot of it. From the flicker of disappointment in his eyes, I could tell that he didn't care much for my choice. But I knew that, if left to his own devices, he would deck himself out in a zoot suit and consider himself inconspicuous because he didn't fluoresce when the lights went out. While I waited for him to change, I went over to my wooden table to work on the chess problem I had set out. But the rabbit had already solved it. I'd been struggling with it for nearly 2 days, and he solved it in less than 10 minutes. Made me wonder what other talents this rabbit had hiding under his bushel. Roger came out of the bathroom wearing my clothes and did a 360-degree turn. "Well, what do you think?"
Your tail's sticking out of the top of your pants.
He tucked it in. "There, better?" I nodded. His ears refused to stay folded over inside the watch cap, so his head resembled an inverted woolen ice cream cone. But I could live with that. I gave him an old pea coat and told him to keep the collar pulled up around his face. "Didn't you forget something?" he asked me before we left.
I don't think so. What?
"How about a piece?"
He said, his word balloon, he flipped his word balloon over the end the way a punk would with a silver dollar.
A piece of what?
"A piece, you know, a gun, a rod, a gun."
He pointed his paw westward and squeezed off an imaginary round at the savages circling his wagon.
I thought you said you'd never owned a gun or shot one before.
"True."
He fired again and grinned as another phantom First Nations person bit the dust. I know that this is old-timey and reflects the attitudes of the time, but let's not use that word. Not good. I'm not doing that on my stream.
Then what do you want with one now?
"It seemed only appropriate. I mean, if I'm going to be a detective, I ought to pack a gun."
I'm a detective, and I don't.
I opened my coat to prove it.
"Oh,"
He said. Roger says a disappointed "oh" a lot in this. I don't know what he needed a gun for. His balloon came out so heavily laden with disappointment he could have sapped Godzilla with it.
"Oh."
Plunk. We went downstairs, got into my car, and I drove us to Roger's house. I picked the lock without leaving a single scratch on it, I might add, and we went inside. Roger immediately rushed to turn off the alarm, but he needn't have bothered. Cleaver's experts had deactivated it, so the cops could come and go freely.
Remember,
I reminded Roger.
we're looking for anything out of the ordinary. Anything which I or the cops might have overlooked, which might be significant to you. Clear?
"You bet,"
Said the rabbit. Where he got it, I'll never know, but he pulled a magnifying glass out of my pea coat and walked into the living room with me close behind. You didn't need any magnifying glass to see what had happened here, though. I hardly recognized the place. Every sofa and chair cushion had been sliced open. The paintings had been pulled off the walls. Every drawer and every table had been dumped into the middle of the carpet. We went through the rest of the house and found it in the same state of disarray. We ended up in Roger's bedroom.
"The police aren't too neat when it comes to searching a place, are they?"
Roger said. He picked some underwear off the floor and put it into a drawer, but the bottom had been kicked out, and his skivvies fell straight through.
No cop did this.
I said.
"Who then?" Roger asked. "And why?"
We answer those questions, and we crack this case.
"Maybe, maybe not," Roger countered. "Maybe with the alarm off, some common crook broke in and robbed the place. I've had a few break-in attempts lately, forced windows mostly. The alarm went off each time and frightened the burglar away. Maybe this time one of them made it."
No.
I poked through the scattered contents of Roger's jewelry box. He didn't have much, but what he did have would fence $50 or $60 minimum. No thief would leave that behind.
No, somebody was looking for something very specific. You have anything hidden in this house? Anything you haven't told me about?
The rabbit hopped to and fro, picking stuff off his floor, and got off an arm loan before he figured out that with the drawers all smashed, he had no place to put it. He stacked it as neatly as he could along one wall.
"There was nothing here," said the rabbit. "Nothing hidden, nothing anybody could possibly want."
What about your contract with the Degreases? Where do you keep that?
"At my bank, in the safety deposit box."
How about your marriage license for you and Jessica?
"Same place."
Stocks and bonds?
"I don't have any."
Money?
"It's in a sock under my mattress."
It would have simplified matters if it had gone, but no such luck. The mattress and the box springs were ripped to shreds, but the sock, money included, was still there.
What do you suppose I could have wanted? Said Roger.
Tell you what, let's go through the house room by room. Try and reconstruct in your memory what each room contained, see if anything's missing.
We started in his bedroom and finished up in the kitchen.
Anything?
I asked.
Nothing of importance, said Roger. Only my tea kettle.
Your what?
My tea kettle.
I had been thinking more in terms of sterling silver or maybe a painting. I might have known better where tunes were concerned.
Was it an antique? Did it have any value?
None that I know of.
Where did you get it?
Roger showed me what had to be a real oddity, a rabbit wearing a sheepish expression.
Off a movie set. It was a tea kettle used in the tea party scene from last year's remake of Alice in Wonderland. I had a bit part in the picture. On a whim, I sneaked the tea kettle off the set as a souvenir after the movie wrapped. But it was only an ordinary cheap tea kettle, similar to any numbers you might find at the 5 and dime.
Is that where this tea kettle came from, the 5 and dime?
No, not this one. From what I remember of it, the studio prop man bought it for 50 cents in a junk shop.
What was it made of?
I don't know. Iron, I suppose. It had a grey lacquer coating and was very heavy. It must have weighed in 2 pounds. Boy, did it ever grew great.
Let's rewind that.
Boy, did it ever grew great.
I can't get through this. Boy, did it ever brew great tea. A surprising little tongue twister there.
But that's about all it was good for. It certainly had no value.
Maybe none that you know about. It could be very valuable indeed if that 2 pounds turned out to be solid gold.
2 pounds of solid gold, the rabbit said. For my life.
He hefted his 2 word balloons, one in each paw, and it wasn't even a close contest. The one with his life in it outweighed the other by more than half. He faced me head on, stood up ramrod straight, and said,
Show me, would you please, the scene of the crime?
I pointed through the kitchen door to the staircase.
You were standing there. Whoever shot you was here in the kitchen. You can see the hole in the wall where the bullet hit. You muttered your last words and fell forward onto the banister. That's where I found you.
I see,
said Roger. He climbed the stairway and stuck a finger into the bullet hole. Then he took another look at the banister. I noticed some dark brown stains at the banister's base. Dried blood. Roger's blood. I did my best to spare him the sight of it.
Hey,
I said, distracting him.
We're finished here. Let's get out.
Roger nodded, but kept staring at the banister.
Look,
I said,
if we want to get this case wrapped up, we've got to get cracking. And I've got some important stuff for you to do. Important detective stuff.
Roger's head snapped in my direction.
You do? What?
I want you to go to the public library and search through books on film history and see if you can find any photo of the tea party scene from Alice in Wonderland you were in. I want a photo that clearly shows the tea kettle. And something else too.
I opened my notebook and tore out a slip of paper.
Here's the serial number of the 38 they found in your nightstand. Go down to City Hall and check the gun registration records. Determine who owns the gun. While you do that, I'm going to pay a call to Dominic DeGreasy. When you finish, go back to my place. We'll meet there and compare notes.
Right, Chief.
He walked through the stairs and out the door. With what I thought showed real class, he never once looked back. Cool. We've got some comments. Simon says, I'm so into the story. Thanks, Josh. Well, that's good, because, it's an interesting little mystery in its own right. And I really like the conceit that that Roger Rabbit is basically helping to solve his own murder in the form of a mental duplicate. I think that's something very different from the novels, from the film, pardon me, that makes this worth reading. Captain Parker says it's pronounced core. I was in the core. I have one last chapter to read that I've planned for. Do we want to read it, or shall we leave it here for today? Does anyone in the chat have anywhere that they need to be? I was thinking this would be a good place to leave off because it ends on a little bit of a twist. Though we would need another voice for this. Dominic DeGreasy, the brother of Rocco.
Rocco was the one played by Rocco.
He was sort of the brains of the outfit, the fast talker. Dominic is the slightly more brutish. He's the muscle, rough and a bit uncultured. So let me know if we want to, if we have a good idea for that voice. Cool. Bryn says absolutely twist it up. So I'll do that. Danielle says, please read. So I think we're going to go ahead. Can I get a suggestion? Because he's literally the first person who speaks in this chapter for Dominic DeGreasy. Rough and tough. A big boy, this Dominic, and not a very pleasant customer. Not the brightest bulb in the bushel, wherever you find bulbs. I didn't actually come with a backup voice for this, but I'm thinking something either something big and stupid or something completely out of character, something really weenie as a joke. So if anyone's got anything, let me know. Let me just check my list of backup voices to see if I've got a funny one. I don't have anything particularly funny. So maybe I'll start reading, and if somebody has a suggestion, I can switch gears into that if there's a good suggestion. Your best erotic reading. The Joker. You know what? I'll do an erotic Joker. Let's see what that sounds like.
A terrible, terrible thing what the rabbit did to my brother,
said Dominic DeGreasy. Oh, this is going to be great. I could see why he had let his brother do the talking. Instead of a voice, he had a throat full of gravel that rattled every word and gave a tin drum sound you hear in people who lubricate their tonsils with loud talk and cheap gin. That kind of works.
You're going to run the syndicate alone? I asked.
You bet! Why not?
He pointed straight down at his desktop the way emperors point down at their thrones.
Me and my brother built this syndicate together. I know as much about it as he did. Sure, the last few years he handled the business end of it. I took care of keeping the talent in line. I just needed a week or so to pick up the fine points, and I'll have this place ticking over along better than ever.
I wished I could find a bookie willing to take a bet on that. DeGreasy sat down at his desk, crossed his size 16 gunboats in a maneuver worthy of a naval captain.
I've got a firm to run here, Captain,
he said. He interlocked his hands behind his head. His black morning coat pulled open and gave a clear view of the howitzer he had packed under his armpit. It appeared to be about the same big-bore caliber as the gun that got Roger, but it was hardly an antique pirate pistol.
I got no time to waste on cheap gumshoes. If you come by to line up a pigeon to expense your tab while you rehash this case, forget it. That rabbit killed my brother, no doubt about it. Why should I pay you to nose around? Come back and tell me what I already know.
That's not why I'm here. To get a client. I already have a client.
DeGreasy snorted.
Huh, who?
That's privileged information. Let's just say that my client believes Roger might be getting framed for your brother's murder, and he wants me to check into it and see what I can find.
Sounds like a waste of money to me.
Possibly. The rabbit might be guilty as hell. But then again, there's the outside chance he might be getting set up for somebody else. And if that's so, Rocco's murderer is right now running around scot-free. You wouldn't want that, would you? You wouldn't want your brother's killer to go loose.
Dominic squirmed around in his chair, unable to find a position that fit.
No, you bet I wouldn't want that to happen. But why should it? The cops put their top man on the case, this Rusty Hudson. I got connections downtown. I requested their best man special. The mayor himself gave me Hudson. You'll find out who really killed Rocco. Why should I think you'll do anything he won't?
Because he already
considers this case closed. He's not going to follow up any loose ends. Why should he? The rabbit's a tailor-made fall guy. Hudson hangs it on the rabbit and wraps up the case in record time. But he might just be wrong. That's what I intend to find out. It would be a lot easier if I had your help, but I'm going to keep plugging whether I get it or not.
He shoved some junk from one side of his desk to the other, and probably considered that a good day's work.
If I go along with you, what would I have to do?
Hardly a thing. Answer a few questions about your brother.
He looked across his desk at his brother's chair. For the first time in his life, there was nobody in it to tell him what to do.
I guess I can go that far,
he said finally.
Swell.
Some police action happening outside. Exciting. Atmosphere.
Swell. Oh, and I need to look through your brother's personal effects, see if there's anything in there that might throw some light on who besides the rabbit might have had motive to kill him.
He balked slightly at that. The cops already went through Rocco's stuff.
Sure they did, with the preconceived notion that the rabbit committed the crime. I come to the task with an open mind. He eyeballed the empty chair, but it still wasn't talking.
Go ahead and search, he said at last.
Wow, someone's really going at it out there. I don't know if you heard that. One of those loud, I'm going to honk at you for 10, 15 seconds to make sure you know I'm really unhappy.
Would you mind?
I made shooing motions toward the door.
I'd like to do it alone. Helps me concentrate.
Sure.
Dominic got to his feet, happy to have an excuse for motion.
Rocco kept his stuff in his drawers. Just stick your head out when you're done.
Before he left, Dominic made a big production of locking the file cabinet at his desk. As soon as he shut the door, I picked the lock and opened his desk drawer. He must have had 50 pornographic magazines of the whips and chains variety stuff in there. The Joker, that makes sense. I searched around but found nothing else, and I mean nothing. His drawers contained no files, no calendar, no paper, not even a pencil. I put his magazines back and locked up. With a perverted dodo like Dominic at its helm, this company would be lucky to last 12 months. I used my picks again on the company files. Based on what I found in there, I revised my prognosis to 6 months. The company's financial statements show that the de Greases had been steadily losing money for nearly a year. They had less operating capital than I did, and I had enough checks to lift me halfway up the hill to the poorhouse. I checked under R and found one of those green cardboard dividers the cops use to put in place when they find something. According to the divider's notation, they had removed the Roger Rabbit file. I fanned through the rest of the folders, but they'd taken nothing else. Obviously, as far as the cops were concerned, Roger was it. I closed up the files and was about to start in on Rocco's desk when something clicked. Something odd. The file drawers appeared to be a few inches shorter than the file cabinet proper. I pulled the file cabinet away from the wall, examined its backside. It took me a while, but I finally found it. A secret compartment. When you pressed a certain screw, the whole rear end of the cabinet swung open to reveal a narrow space maybe 2 inches deep. I had expected to find a few files inside, but instead the space held snapshots of original segments of comic strip artwork. Each piece of artwork contained a framed print of a comic strip and the negative used to produce it. The same kind of stuff Rocco had hanging there on the walls. If I remembered rightly, he'd said such segments were worth big bucks. This artwork portrayed Baby Herman strips. Roger Rabbit appeared in all of them, so they must be fairly recent. Each segment had been signed by its photographer, Carol Masters, in every case. I flipped one of the snapshots over and found a price penciled on the back. $5,000. Certainly not small potatoes on my side of town, but hardly the mighty moolah Rocco had led me to believe the stuff fetched. Of course, what I knew about art you could put into one of those blank paint-by-number sets. Maybe these were inferior quality segments and didn't command a very high price. But if that were the case, why go to so much trouble to hide them? I studied the segments up close, but couldn't see any difference between them and the ones on the wall. One of the segments did have a familiar look to it, but I couldn't place it. It was hardly likely that I'd have seen it in the paper since I'd never read the funnies. I put the snapshots in my pocket, closed up the compartment, pushed the filing cabinet back into place. Next I went to work on Rocco's desk. He kept his desk calendar inside in his upper center drawer. I checked it for yesterday and discovered he had penciled in an appointment at home with somebody he identified only by the initials SS. The meeting was set for 11 o'clock p.m., barely an hour before he had been killed. In his bottom drawer I found a few books on ancient mythology, and that was about it. I stuck my head out the door and asked Dominic to rejoin me.
Any luck?
He asked.
Maybe,
I answered.
How about giving me some background to set my findings into perspective?
Shoot!
What's your opinion of Jessica Rabbit?
He picked up a letter opener and jabbed it so hard into the desktop blotter that it cut through to the wood underneath. I wondered if anybody in the world beside Roger saw any good in that woman.
She was a bimbo when I met her, and she's still a bimbo. I could never figure what he saw in her.
How did they meet?
Rocco discovered her dancing in some slimy downtown strip club. He took her out of there, groomed her, bought her expensive clothes, and taught her how to act. As her way of saying thanks, she dumped him for a stupid rabbit.
Maybe she did come back to him. Oh, but she did come back to him, I pointed out.
He pulled the letter opener up and took a piece of the blotter with it.
Sure, she came back to him, but only when she found out that the rabbit couldn't give her what Rocco could. She was out for nobody but herself. Rocco would have been better off without her. I told him not to take her back, but the guy loved her so much he would have forgiven her for anything.
The word is that Jessica pressured Rocco into giving Roger a contract. You wouldn't know anything about that.
Not really. Like I said, I never got involved in the business end of it. I personally never wanted to sign the rabbit. I never thought he had that much talent to begin with. But Rocco insisted, although he never once gave me a good reason why. Said it was just a hunch he had, a feeling. But I always thought pretty much like everybody else did, that it was really Jessica. He took the rabbit on because Jessica asked him to. Sure, it turned out to be the right move. The rabbit wound up making a spiffy second banana, but nobody would have guessed that going in.
Roger insisted that Rocco promised him a solo strip. Oh, pardon me. Another one of those, midday burps. I need to eat something. Roger insisted that Rocco promised him a solo strip. Any truth to that?
I don't know. Like I said, I didn't get much involved with that end of things. But it wouldn't surprise me. If Rocco wanted somebody bad enough, he'd promise them anything. Never put it into contract, though. He'd tell the character that it wasn't necessary, that his word was good enough, and he always kept his word.
Did he?
You kidding?
Dominic tried to laugh, but I don't think he ever learned how. Interesting that we're going with the Joker, and this guy doesn't laugh very much. Now I'm just thinking about that detective from The Simpsons.
The idea that the beer baron could be operating under my very nose is laughable. Well, you all know what laughter sounds like.
Where were we?
You kidding? Nobody could lie like Rocco.
Supposing for a minute that Roger didn't kill Rocco, do you think Jessica could have?
I can't figure why. Rocco gave her everything she wanted. Would have been like snuffing the goose that laid the golden egg.
Does Jessica stand to inherit Rocco's estate?
He stoked up a slim, black, unfiltered cigarette, centered it in his mouth, and blew smoke out the other side around it. This is a cigar, not a cigarette. And look, I really know how to smoke them, don't I?
I don't know. The will ain't been read yet. The lawyer does it tomorrow right after the funeral.
You know the rabbit's dead, too.
He flipped his match into the wastebasket, and he didn't have much to worry about it starting a fire. His wastebasket held no paper. He was either very neat or very unproductive. No question which got my vote.
I heard, and I think it's a real shame.
You do?
Yeah, I think it's a shame that somebody else got to him before I did.
He hacked another piece out of his blotter.
After what he did to my brother, it would have given me great pleasure to shoot that rabbit myself.
Any idea who might have spared you the trouble?
He shrugged and shook his head.
Do you suppose Jessica could have done it?
Possible, I suppose. I think she could kill anybody, anytime, anywhere.
I held up the comic strip segments I found in the secret compartment.
You know anything about these?
Dominic took them and looked them over. He read them, but only with great difficulty, by running his fingers across them and sounding out the words.
Where did you get these? You didn't have them when you came in.
They were in Rocco's bottom desk drawer. What are they?
They're segments that disappeared from Rocco's gallery about a month ago. Rocco had this place downtown that he used as an outlet for this kind of art. His son, Little Rock, runs it for him. One day these segments turned up missing from there. Little Rock couldn't explain how. Rocco never reported it because he didn't want to publicize the sloppy way the kid ran the gallery. He figured that way it would only invite more thieves.
What about the prices on the back?
Dom turned the segments over. At least he read the numbers.
Well, I don't know much about prices, but these look awful low. It could be that somebody offered them to Rocco for sale. He dealt in original segments all the time, so it would be natural for somebody who had seen them, who had them to see if Rocco wanted to buy. Maybe the seller didn't know they were stolen, or maybe the thief got Rocco to pay, to get them back. Rocco probably would have done it to protect his kid's reputation.
Your brother had an appointment with somebody last night. Somebody with the initials SS. You know who that might be?
SS? Beats me.
What about mythology?
Huh?
The study of ancient legends. Your brother had some books on the subject in his desk. You have any idea why?
Probably research for a new strip. He did a lot of that. He gets the idea, works out the cast and characters, then turns it over to some photographer to write up a script and shoot.
I took the comic segments back from Dominic. You mind if I hang on to these for a while?
Be my guest. Just make sure I get them back. I was almost out the door when, almost as an afterthought, Dominic said, "By the way, as long as you're poking around into that rabbit's affairs, maybe you could do me a favor."
If I can. What?
Dominic lowered his voice and became as coy as a debutante sidling up to a bowl of spiked punch.
"Well, when Rocco and the rabbit were having their run-in, the rabbit one day swiped something out of the office here. It was a family memento. It was very precious to Rocco and me. The rabbit took it, I think, because he figured he might be able to hold it for ransom or something. I'd appreciate it if you could keep your eye out for it. If you come across it, I'd be willing to pay you to get it back."
What exactly was it?
"Nothing valuable. It's a tea kettle."
A tea kettle, you say?
"Yeah, it belonged to my grandmother. She gave it to Rocco and me just before she died. We, used to brew tea here in the office."
Describe it for me.
I said, although I had a sneaky hunch exactly how the description would go.
"Oh, it weighs about 3 pounds, has grey paint on the outside. There's not much else you can tell about it. It looks like any other cheap tea kettle. Will you keep your eye out for it?"
You bet. Glad to do it. You wouldn't believe how interested I am in finding that tea kettle.
The guy could have done wonders with oranges at breakfast, judging by the way he wrapped his gigantic hands around mine and squeezed.
"You know, Valiant, I'm starting to like you."
Now that really made my day. I can honestly say I admit tunes brighter than this bozo. So, that's where we're going to leave off with the reading today. Let me just see what we've got in the way of comments. Eleanor says, "This I've got to hear." Well, I did my best. That's the perfect description of erotic Joker. Simon Crane laughing. Eleanor asking what's going on here. Nobody really knows. Admittedly, I forgot about the erotic. He's not a very sensual character, that Joker.
"Oh, Harley, let's you and me go for a ride."
I'm important. I want everybody in the neighborhood to know. Honk. So I thought that would be a good chapter to end on because in the last chapter, Roger mentioned the only thing stolen was a seemingly ordinary tea kettle, and in this chapter, Dominic DeGreasy also seems to want to get his hands on that tea kettle. Maybe there's more to meets the eye. So that's the end of the reading. The last thing I want to share with you today is I have some clips, test animation from early on in Roger Rabbit's development, using the very earliest designs just to see if, the animation and live action could be coupled together. And they use dialogue straight from the book. And in this chapter, we came to one of those segments. So here it is. This is the earliest test animation of Roger Rabbit.
You tone down that goofiness. You want my help, you act like a human. You understand?
Oh, yes, sir. But wouldn't it be more helpful if I started to came along with you? Because what if maybe you gotta get into some more lots or something? Okay.
So there it is. I hope that we're all able to hear that. Let me just listen in. Oh yeah, cool. The audio's playing. You heard that. The voice that you heard. This is a fun tidbit. The voice used in that test was none other. My mouth is slow as a wet week today. The voice used for that test is none other than Paul Rubens, aka Pee Wee Herman, who is obviously quite famous at the time as Pee Wee Herman. This would have been mid to late 80s. The movie is what, 89, 88? So I assume this would have been done at most maybe a year or two before, at the height of Pee Wee Herman's popularity. So kind of a natural choice given the tenor of his voice. Again, they're still using that early Trix Rabbit design. But yeah, just interesting. The other clips that I'll show you later on feature Captain Cleaver, Clever Cleaver, the Toon Cop, and also Jessica Rabbit, who looks really, really different. So that'll be interesting. And those clips actually combine live action and animation. That was just animation. So that's everything that I have for us today. Any good comments? Dominic DeGreasy is a himbo, and I love him. Bren, we've got to do something about this. We keep using himbo when we shouldn't. Granted, well, I suppose he is a little bit polite. He's at least cooperative, but I think we'll discover in later chapters that he's a bit of a bore and a bully.
I had this discussion about my D&D character. We keep calling him a himbo, but I'm like, he's not polite in the slightest. In fact, in one of our campaigns, we went to the Feywilds, where, you know, if you're impolite to a fairy, curtains. So my character literally couldn't speak the whole time. They told him not to speak. They stung his tongue with bees so that he wouldn't speak. That's how impolite he is, chronically impolite. So, not a himbo. If they're big and strong, but they're not polite, they're just a jock. Lesson for today. So, I hope everyone has had a good time. We're back to level 2.5 here in New Zealand, which I believe means we can get together in groups of 10 or more. And obviously, let's all continue to use our best judgment. I'm still going to be working from home, so probably next week, until we go back to level 1, I'm probably still going to be streaming here from home. So, thank you everybody for tuning in. I hope that was fun. I need to go rest my voice, because once again, Danny DeVito, and especially the Joker, those are some rough voices on the old vocal pipe. So, catch everybody next week.
So long, everybody.